Hi, everyone. I'm going to try to speak as loud as I can. So if you can't hear me, just kind of indicate.
Alicia, you have to get closer to the microphone.
So like this?
Yes.
Glad I said something. So if you can't hear me at any point, just kind of wiggle, and I'll notice, and I'll speak a little louder. So this is about targeting, and it's not going to tell you how to find your targets specifically. Because that's going to be different for everyone. Your genre doesn't tell you what your targets are. Other books like yours kind of can tell you your targeting, but you need to find your targeting yourself. So what this presentation is going to do is show you the different tools that you can use with Amazon ads to test and see what targeting works best for you. So let's get started. So I'm only going to be talking about sponsored product ads, not lock screen, not the other stuff you get with Advantage. And there are technically 3 types of targeting when you make a sponsored product ad, and that's auto-targeting, keyword targeting, and product targeting. Now, I split those up into 6 types, and those 6 types are auto ad targeting, and then for keywords, I do specifically targeted keywords and non-specific keywords. And then for product targeting, you can target by category or by ASIN. And then I have a 6th category I call your brand, which can use either keywords or ASINs or both. For auto ad targeting, I'm gonna have my trusty thing. For auto ad targeting, there are 2 ways that Amazon will target, and that's close match and loose match. Technically, there are 2 more, but they're not relevant for books. You're never gonna get impressions on those. Close match is only about the book and the series the book belongs to. That's the only thing that's going to trigger close match. Not even your author name will trigger close match. Close match usually has a much lower CPC because of how relevancy affects what you pay for clicks. Now, loose match is going to be based mostly on your metadata. So that includes your author name, your series title, other books by you, the keywords that you use in your KDP keywords, the categories you choose, and it also considers your historical sales. If you look at your suggested keywords when you create a keyword ad, that gives you a good idea of where Amazon kind of sees where they're going to start putting you. And some of those suggested keywords are a little weird. So here are just 3 targeting tips for auto ads. The first thing is relevancy. Relevancy is king. That's what my Vegas presentation basically was about, was relevancy. And relevancy is based on Amazon's perceived relevancy of your book, not necessarily what is actually relevant. And we actually train Amazon into what our book is relevant. And sometimes what we do unintentionally trains them wrong. So one way to see if there is problematic targeting on Amazon's end is to run an auto ad. If you check your search term tab, which is new on ads, or you download your search term report, you can see exactly where your ad showed up if it got a click or a sale. It won't show you where impressions happened without a click. That's kind of just for us to guess, I guess. With using that, you can see where you're being shown and whether or not it's relevant. So let's say you write dark urban fantasy with a male protagonist and like anti-romance. If you're being shown a lot for urban fantasy romance or reverse harem, that's not good targeting. So you would negative target those keywords, and Amazon will stop showing you in those search terms or product pages. Now, specific keyword targeting are when you intend what the target is. This is usually an author or a series or a book. You have an idea in mind where you want to appear and for who. I am clumsy, I'm sorry. The different types are author names, series titles, book titles, that kind of thing. Now, when you're trying to find whether or not someone's a good match for you, the cover is a good indicator of whether or not someone will associate your book with the book you're advertising on. So that usually increases your CTR. Now, of course, that's dependent on whether their cover is genre appropriate and your cover is genre appropriate, but CTR is CTR. That's only like the first mountain that you have to get over. Having similar tropes that are indicated in your description to the book that you are advertising on, or the series you're advertising on, can increase your conversions. Because they say, hey, this is a book that's like the book that I like, I'm gonna buy it. Crossover audience. especially when it comes to later books in a series, tend to indicate the people that are going to actually read through your series. Because just because someone buys it doesn't mean you've hooked them. It means you got a sale. Now, one of the most popular pieces of advice for finding those specific targets are also bots. And in the course that I'm running, I had everybody do synergistic also bots, where they go through their also bots and check to see if they appear on other people's also bots that appear on theirs. And it's been a fun experiment because a lot of people are finding it's not what they think. So some ways to find relevant targeting that can work is, like I said, the synergistic also bots. And that's where the books that appear on your also bots, especially later on in your series, if you have a series, also appear on theirs. So you know that you have some crossover audience. It's not perfect, but it at least gives you an idea. Also bots tend to be based more on sales. So that's why the bestsellers are everywhere on also bots, even if it's not even the same genre. And that's the danger with also bots. Adjacent also bots is looking at the also bots of the books that have synergistic also bot with you to see who has synergistic also bots with them. It's like a tangled weave of spiders or something. That's one way. It's not even really the best way. You can also look at Amazon lists based on genre, like the bestseller list, the hot new release list. I particularly like the coming soon list because it tends to be targets that people have no idea are coming. You can also look at just the genre specific, it's called the pop list, where you just look up that genre and it'll list all of the books listed in that category. Aggregated historical data. This is where you download your search term report and you go through it and you connect different search terms and different ASINs to the book or author or series that it's likely connected to. And sometimes you're going to get a lot of different things it could be connected to, and that's just not something you're going to consider. And so what you do with that information is you aggregate all of the data from everything in a specific series or by a specific author, and you get a better idea of what is actually happening, rather than looking at a keyword or an ASIN individually. This can tell you that, hey, you're getting a lot of clicks on this one author and you think it's doing great, but you have 120 clicks and no sales. And your CTR is like 1 in 2,000. So you're targeting this person, but it's unlikely to be converting as well as you would hope. And so you're paying for things that aren't going to be useful. And you won't see that on a keyword or ASIN level. One thing that I do, and this is also about the non-specific keywords, is I use Publisher Rocket's keyword search, and I'll search something like fantasy. And they'll come up with a bunch of keywords associated with fantasy. And that's how I kind of choose what are the most powerful non-specific keywords to use, both for my metadata and for ads. Now there's a nifty thing where you can hit competition, and it'll bring up the top books associated with that keyword based on the search. And you can target those books. It also gives you a good idea if what you're using as a keyword is also not very relevant to your book, even though you think it is. So with authors, a lot of authors are multi-genre. And so one thing you can do is if you're going to use an author name, is to negative target their other series that are not relevant. And you would do that by the series title, that kind of thing. Just realize that if you're targeting an author name, you can't really control if someone's looking for a specific series, but is only searching by author. But it should prevent you from appearing on those product pages. You cannot negative target ASINs as keywords. It doesn't work. I need a bit of water, sorry. I went into this in Vegas, but one of the biggest things that people are finding difficult is they'll think that their keywords are acting random because you're using the same keyword but it acts different in different ads. One thing to keep in mind is a keyword doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. If you use a keyword search for a popular book, let's say Twilight, and that's your keyword, and you're trying to target Twilight, anything with the word Twilight on it could be a potential search term. So if someone is looking for, I should have used something better of an example. Well, let's say this is a true story. I used the keyword fantasy for her as for one of my clients because it was already in their keyword list and it was doing really, really well. And then I searched it. And it's a sex toy company. I no longer use fantasy for her as a keyword. So you want to search the terms that you are using to make sure you're not appearing on the wrong products. This is another fun one. Invisible terms. These are the ones that Amazon ignores. And you probably know some of them. The, a, and. But they also ignore some interesting ones like will, for, my. I have a list. Anyways, the important thing about that is if you have a title that includes those words, if you have a title that includes that words, like I was targeting a book called For the Blood, Amazon ignores for and the, so your actual keyword is blood. That can turn up some interesting search terms. And so that's another reason to know what those words are. Here we go. And, a, and, the, will, for, my. Okay, I did cover them all. If you look at your search term report and you compare your keyword to what is actually triggering, you can see kind of what words they're ignoring as well. Now, for non-specific keywords, there are a few different types, like genre, tropes, tone, character type, and format. So I kind of went through what I would use for an urban fantasy romance. So urban fantasy romance, vampires, slow burn, which is a trope, enemies to lovers, which is a trope, dark, which is tone, snarky female, alpha male, that's character types. Now format's interesting. Format would be something like ebook or paper book or audio. Now if you have all of those formats, that's good, but if you don't, you can negative target that so you're not shown. So if you don't have a hardcover, you can negative target hardcover and you won't be shown if someone is searching for one. If you're wide, you can negative target Kindle Unlimited or KU, and you won't show up when someone's looking for a Kindle book that's in Kindle Unlimited. Some ways to find non-specific keywords. I talked about Publisher Rocket. That's one thing that I do recommend and what I use. I don't actually use it for AMS lists because I prefer to do that manually because of all the reasons that I went through, but it is one of the best for finding actual keywords. You want to look at your 7 KDP keywords if you're using specific ones. Because of how relevancy is determined by Amazon, your KDP keywords and your metadata increase your relevancy with searches and keywords when you're using those in your Amazon ads. So they're kind of like your prime, Amazon really wants to show you when you use those keywords, no matter what the competition is. And the last one is subtitles of books and series. A lot of people will put their genre as their subtitle, and sometimes they'll get really specific. It's kind of fun. LMPN and Michael Anderle is well known for doing urban fantasy action adventure urban fantasy, which immediately tells me it's an LMBPN book or someone who's copying Michael Anderle. And so that association helps when someone is searching for that kind of book. They're looking for an action urban fantasy, those books are going to come up first. Okay, I covered most of this, but you want to balance between visibility and conversions. Because keywords compete with each other, even in the same ad, if you're using something like urban fantasy and then urban fantasy romance, even if someone searches urban fantasy romance, urban fantasy, the keyword, will probably trigger over urban fantasy romance, just because that's going to be searched more and more. However, if someone's searching urban fantasy, they could be searching a ton of different kinds, and it's not necessarily going to be appropriate for your book. So in my experience, general or broad keywords like urban fantasy, romance, even contemporary romance will get lots and lots of impressions, and you can really lower your bids on those. But they're going to have lower conversions, and they could have lower CTR. You can control that a little bit better with negative keywords, so you're not shown if someone is searching for reverse harem contemporary romance and you're not. But you kind of have to think of ahead of time, or you have to react. However, if you're more specific with your keywords, like female POV, snarky, urban fantasy with romance, you're probably not going to get a lot of hits on that. So you want to balance between specific keywords that are going to trigger those conversions and sales because that's what your book is about, versus getting as much impressions as you can that are still relevant. Category targeting is fun. This is where you can pick any pretty much category in the store that Amazon allows you to in a category ad and bid on being shown on any product in that category. This includes non-books. However, Amazon will not show your book if it doesn't deem that your target is relevant. They just won't show it at all. So you're not likely to be put on very many non-books, even if you're targeting categories that aren't books. In the US, you can only target the book category and not the Kindle category. In the UK and Germany, you can do Kindle. I have no idea why the US can't do Kindle. It kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Now, your book, especially if you're targeting the book category, can appear on anything that appears in that category. And book categories include paperbacks, hardcovers, audiobooks, Kindle books, coloring books. That's always fun. And so you want to know what is in the category that you're targeting, which I'll get into in tips. The best thing you can do is research your potential categories. I usually just do the bestseller list to start to see if there's a lot of mismatched genre titles. And in book categories and Kindle categories, there are probably going to be different targeting, different products. Book categories tend to be very trad heavy, and Kindle categories tend to be very indie heavy, probably because we like to request specific Kindle categories, and we can't get into those book categories as easily. So make sure that you're checking to see if the book category that you're choosing is actually relevant to your book. Which brings me to using Refine. You can refine the category by, I believe, star rating, price, and whether or not it's in Prime. You can use those things to control where your book is going to be shown. Most paperbacks are not under $9.99. So if you're bidding under, or if you're refining under $9.99, you're less likely to be shown on paperbacks and probably on audio too. It can also mean that you can price closer to what indie prices, like $4.99 and under, and then you're not going to get hit with a bunch of trad books. If you sell well with trad targeting, then of course you don't want to do that. The same is true if you're doing Kindle categories, although I tend to be less, I tend to use refinement less with Kindle categories because I'm not worried about being put on paperbacks. You can also negative any ASIN, and it won't show up on that book that's associated with that ASIN, even if it's in that category. And so that's how I do category maintenance. I'll check all the books that got clicks based on their ASIN, and I will negative target the ones that I see as irrelevant. Specific product page targeting is targeting by ASIN. This is the most control you can have on your targeting. You say, I want to be shown on this page, or if someone searches this ASIN, because you can be shown in searches too. It tends to require a higher bid because of how specific it is. And the more popular a specific book, the more competition there is. Plus, with the way that ad relevancy works to lower your needed bid, it tends to be diluted across many ASINs compared to if you were just using the keyword of the author or the series, which could also get you onto those product pages. However, this is the best solution to bypass any targeting issues to do with authors that are multi-genre, where you don't want to target their author name, or when book titles are across multiple different books, so you're not showing up on the wrong books. You can target both categories and ASINs in the same ad because they're both under product targeting. I tend not to because I haven't found it very successful, and I like to spread out my targeting between multiple ads because that'll help with keeping CTR high. And category ads tend to have lower CTR than ASIN ads. My specific product targeting tips. What I like to do is target new releases and pre-orders. And you can bid a pretty minimal amount if nobody else has really discovered that it's out there. And you can build relevancy on it if it's a relevant target. And once you've built relevancy on a target, Amazon will give you a boost based on your relevancy when it comes to the winning bids. So you can continue to be shown on that target for less than someone who's targeting it when it becomes more popular and more competitive. You can also target audiobooks specifically. While you can't advertise your audiobook, you can target audiobooks, and that'll sometimes get people to click over and buy your audio instead. ASIN targeting is mostly how I train or retrain Amazon's algorithm when relevancy is screwed up. I do this a lot with new releases, especially new series releases, and I aim to target books that I want the book that I'm advertising to appear on their also bots when it releases. This way you can get a big push of organic visibility. This is how I help someone launch their book into the top 100 and make $30,000 a month. It's because I micro-targeted very specific niche. And one of the series that we really focused on targeting hit number 3 in the store. Free visibility. Again, that always doesn't work, so I'm not saying everybody can do that. And, I can't even always do that. So the last one is brand ads, and I'm going to go over this a little bit more quickly. Brand ads are basically ads that you're advertising yourself. This is something people like to ask if negative targeting themselves is a good idea, and I usually say no. And that's because if you're not targeting yourself, someone else is. And so that means when someone searches for you or your book, at least 2 other ads are going to appear before your book in the search results. Now, if someone really wants your book, they're just going to scroll down. But because of, again, how relevancy affects your bids and your clicks, you can bid very low on yourself and beat out everyone else, because what's more relevant than your own book? You can use just auto ads and it does this same thing. However, you have less control. And you have less control in your bidding, because if you want your auto ads to show for something other than yourself, you're going to want to bid higher to compete with people who are also targeting those targets. So some ways that I use brand ads. I use it to direct traffic to a new release, not only with books in the series that have the new release, but also other books in the backlist. You can also drive traffic to your low visibility backlist when you use ads from those books on your high visibility series. And this can get people to go back and forth and increase crossover between your series. Now, one thing about this, and I know I keep saying the word relevancy, and maybe I should come up with a synonym for it because I'm getting tired of saying it, but when you target, let's say even your author name on a book, and you don't negative target that book is going to win against your other books that are also targeting your author name because it's deemed more relevant, unless you're bidding way differently. So if you negative target your own book or series on that book and series, you can make sure that it'll be your other books and series that appear on that product page or with those searches, which helps you control what's actually being seen and direct traffic better. This is my number 1 targeting tip. This is a game changer. Repetitive targeting dilutes relevancy across your ads. Now, I don't mean repeated keywords and ASINs, although that is repetitive targeting. I mean any keyword or ASIN or auto ad or category targeting that targets the same target. So the same product page, the same search result. So let's say someone landed on the page for Sinister Unhallowed by John P. Logsdon. Now, Amazon's like, okay, which ads are we going to show on this page? You can only your ads, all the ads for a specific book compete with each other before they're ever shown or ever competing with anyone else. So if you have 10 ads for the same book, Amazon will choose which ad and choose which keyword or ASIN or category that triggered that particular ad when it competes in the bid auction against other books. So let's say when someone lands on Sinister, that Amazon pulls up and looks at all the ads you have that could be triggered by that product page. So for keywords, we have John P. Logsdon, which is the author, Logsdon, which is the last name of the author, Sinister, the name of the series, Unhallowed, the name of the book, Sinister Book 1, and Paranormal Police. And that's because the big series title is Paranormal Police Department. Now, all of those keywords could technically trigger the ad it's associated with to be shown on that product page. But this person is also John, and he's using an auto ad. So the auto ad is also in competition now. And we're using the specific ASIN for Unhallowed. So now that ad's in competition. Plus, we're targeting the book categories urban fantasy and horror comedy, which this book is also in. So now we have 10 potential keywords, ASINs, or categories, or an auto ad that could be triggered, but only one of them will win and go on to the final battle. So which one wins? Well, the one that's most relevant, basically. So let's say there were two that had, similar relevancies, Logsdon and the ASIN. Now, Logsdon has a bid of 40 cents, and the ASIN has a bid of 53 cents. Which one wins? The ASIN, because it's a higher bid. So you have just increased your potential CPC because you bid against yourself. But it's not because you're using the same keyword or that anything like that. It's just that you potentially could have used a target and an ad that would have cost you less. Now, in the grand scheme of things, how often does this happen? Well, pretty often. But how often is this going to impact your profit? Pretty often. But is it worth the extra effort to actually care? In my opinion, yes. Because, again, as relevancy works, the more the more the ad is shown and gets clicks and gets conversions and has a higher CTR, the more relevant it is, which means you can win bid auctions at lower bids, which means you pay less. So this targeting thing is probably the primary reason why your ads die, especially when you make new ads. And this is why making ads over and over again, even if it's different actual keywords, can work against you, especially if you're raising the bids. So some ways to work around this is to use low bids in conjunction with top of search placement at a higher percentage. And this will give you the potential to win if you're going to be at the top of the search, but you're less often going to show up on product pages because your bid is so low. So if you bid, say, 20 cents, but you put 300% as the top of search, 30 cents is what you're going to be bidding if it's a product page or if you're not eligible for top of search. Or you could go up to 60 cents? 60 cents sounds right. Yeah, 60 cents if you can win one of those top spots, which tends to be worth it. Using ASINs for product page targeting over using the keywords can be useful with that too. And using brand ads versus auto ads. Or if you are using auto ads, negative target yourself and use brand ads for targeting yourself. So 2 bonus tips on that is utilize your negative keywords. You control where you're going to be shown if you use negative keywords, because you won't be shown there. And then the other one is planning ahead. If you plan ahead what your targets are, how you're targeting, what ad it's going to be in, you're going to reduce your overlap between targeting. Now that sounds like a pain in the ass. It kind of is. But by doing that, you have so much less work in the future. I have a lot of clients with a lot of series, with a lot of ads. And as their stuff grows, I have less and less time. And so by doing this, I can just let things run, check periodically, and I don't have to keep creating more ads. I don't have to keep doing more research. I can just make sure that everything's running appropriately, and then from there I can either reduce bids or scale or do whatever I need to if something is going wrong. I'm very much if everything's going fine, leave it alone. If something is blowing up, and something is always blowing up, then it needs attention. And I can only do that by being prepared ahead of time. I think Craig's looking at me like, I'm done. Thank you for your time. Thank you.